So let's create provision in Azure SQL database, and this is lab number 2. So we are going to deploy an Azure SQL database with a virtual network endpoint. Connectivity to the SQL database will be validated using SQL Server Management Studio from the lab virtual machine, if available from your local machine setup. Right, so let's start with navigating on the Azure portal, and we are going to log in using the credentials that we are given. Temporary access pass. Now here let's check out the resource group that starts with contoso RG and some random characters, right? So this is present. We are going to create a um, that this resource group subscription that belongs to DP300. Okay, let's first start creating a virtual network. So this is the DP103, the subscription that has been given, and the resource group that we have seen previously that was already there. Let's say name it as lab02 vnet, and we will keep the region where we have the resource group. So let's check it out where we have the resource group. What is the region? It's West US2. So we are going to keep this as West US2. Let's create it. So we have just completed task number 1. Now next task will be to provision an Azure SQL database in the Azure portal. So let's search for SQL databases. We are going to select SQL database, and we are going to select the subscription, the resource group that we previously have seen, which is by default present. You are going to name it as Adventure Works LT. That's my database name, Adventure Works LT. Now for the server, we are going to create a new server. We are going to add the server name as DP300 and some random numbers. This should be globally unique. Then you have to select the same region as we selected for resource group, and then we are going to use a skill authentication method over here. Server admin login credentials will be, let's say, DP300 admin, and the password, let me keep the password as well. So you have to make sure and remember the password. If you are setting it, you need to store it somewhere. And that's our database information. And now we are going to do some more settings over here. If you want to use elastic pool, so we don't want elastic pool as of now for the demonstration. um, Workload environment will be development, because we are going to use this for production environment. And on the compute and storage option that we have, if you select on configure database, here you have some options for the service tiers: general purpose, hyperscale, right, or DTU based, but based upon what is the requirement. We are going to select basic for less demanding workloads. Apply. It has 2 GB storage. Then backup and storage, backup storage redundancy option, let's keep it locally redundant. Networking. Okay, so here for the networking part, connectivity method, we are going to use a private endpoint. And let's add a private endpoint. This is a resource group, this is a subscription, the location. Name of the private endpoint would be, let's say, DP300 SQL endpoint. Target is our SQL server. Virtual network is lab vnet subnet. Let's select this one, default subnet over here. If you, whether you want to integrate with the private DNS, so here we are going to select yes. And private DNS zone link will be created for that. So we are going to keep the default value. Accept, apply everything, and then endpoint is going to appear in the list like this. Next is security. So security options available for onboarding your Defender to Defender for Cloud. Okay, but we are not supposed to select that as of now. Additional settings, here we are going to select a sample database. AdventureWorks LD, that's the name that we have selected, will be given to the database. And we are going to check for the validations, and once everything is completed, our Azure our SQL database will be ready. And once it is deployed, we are going to see how to connect to that database, how to enable access to an Azure SQL database. So let's wait for it. So let's wait for the deployment. Okay, now this is deployed, and let's go to our resource. And here we're going to access like in the overview section, we'll just select the server name, the server over here, and we have to do some network settings. So we are going to make sure that the selected networks it is accessible from, and we are going to add the client IP address, that is this machine's IP address is going to take, right, this one. So this will add a firewall rule to allow your client IP address to access the server, right, this machine. We have to enable this option as well, so let's update this as well. Allow Azure services and resources to access the server. Now we can connect with the server because we have enabled the access. Now let's connect to an Azure SQL database and SQL Server Management Studio. So let's select our database. AdventureWorks LT. And we are going to copy the server name from this overview page, and let's launch the SQL Server Management Studio application. Once it loads, we are going to connect to the server using that server name, the value that we copied from the Azure portal, right? So here we are going to add the server name, and let's select SQL Server Authentication login. If you remember that the admin name that we provided, DP300 admin. Let me add the password and let's connect. And once our server is connected, we are going to pass, or we are going to add some queries. Okay, so now we have this database over here, AdventureWorks LT. So let's query this database. And I'm going to paste one SQL command where we are going to select the top 10 rows of from the customer table. Then the values or the fields that we want will be customer ID, company name, and we are going to add it. Okay, we are going to sum that subtotal column, and it will be displayed as overall order subtotal. Then from the sales table, we are going to select um, like there is a join between sales table and customer. We are going to select sales order header, that is a mapping, and group by customer ID and the overall order subtotal, order by descending order, right? So this is a sample query, and we are giving this query to understand how it gives the desired result depending upon what information we need to collect. So order by the descending order, overall order subtotal, that's a calculated column. Okay, and it is selected the fields from those tables. Now let's paste another query, and execute the result. So it's going to display two values, two columns, product category and order quantity. Okay, where it is, you can see that it's performing a join, right? So you need to understand SQL in order to understand a statement. Okay. So this is how we can retrieve the required results on running a query. We want some custom uh, results, okay, from the database only for selected columns, and then we can save those in the form of reports, right? So this is how you, so in this demonstration we have seen how to create a virtual network, how to add an endpoint, and when you add a server, right, add a database server, that is your SQL server in Azure portal, how to provision that SQL database, and once you provision the SQL database, how to enable access from your client machine, and then how to connect to that database using the SQL Studio Management Server, and how to run the queries. Okay, so that's complete our lab number 2.